You guys are going to love today's episode. We are interviewing Dr. Stephanie Ray, founder and creator of Bioray.com. You guys have asked us to get somebody from Bioray to come onto the podcast, and we have finally delivered. You're going to love part 1 of this conversation and part 2 that will be coming next week. Enjoy this conversation. Let's get into it. Welcome to Under the Sun Podcast. I'm Ilea.
And I'm Irene. Grab a cup of coffee and your comfiest sweats and join us every Monday as two best friends discuss everything from raising free-range gremlins to business and really everything under the sun.
Let's get started, and thanks for being here.
Welcome everybody back to the podcast. Today we have someone that I'm super excited to talk to. It is Dr. Ray from Bioray. You guys have heard us talk about the products a lot over the podcast. So now we get to hear the full how-tos from someone who created it versus us that just kind of guess.
We read the pamphlet, we read the website, but also like there's nothing like hearing the person who created it, why they created it, and where this all came from. So there will be a slight, we might, like the camera's up there and then our laptop is down here. So there might be some eye wiggle happening, but we're listening and we're here with you. So Dr. Ray, would you like to tell us who you are and what you do?
Well, first, thank you for having me on. I've listened to your podcast and I love how you talk about things.
Thank you.
You're very easy to listen to, and I think you make an impact because your mom's using things that are happening in real life, and that makes all the difference.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So you're welcome. I am Stephanie Ray, and I wasn't always a doctor. I started out as a kid herbalist. And when I was a little girl, my dad raised us up racing motorcycles. So I am an enduro racer across the California desert since I've been about 8.
That's amazing.
And it was so fun. And we still ride. My whole family, we still ride. But between races, I would pick herbs. And there was a woman that was the girlfriend of another rider from Mexico. And she taught me what the herbs did. And I didn't know. I thought I was just picking pretty things that smelled good or were interesting textures. And her name was Maria. And so I learned what chaparral did and wild sage. And that started a love of herbalism. So fast forward to my early 20s, and I started studying with Ron Teagarden, who is a master tonic herbalist. And I started learning about all the Chinese traditions, fell in love with them, that there was actually something to follow, empirical knowledge, and started formulating for him for customers on Saturdays. And then I met my now former husband, Dr. Timothy Ray, and I started Bioray with him, and we had 5 clinics. Wow. And then I went back to school and I got my doctorate in naturopathy. So it just became this I am a lifelong learner and studier. I love to study. I love to do research. And everything came out of curiosity, really. Just an interest in it. But also I've always wanted to help people. Don't know where that came from. I've had it since I was like 4. Oh. And it was just, I never thought it would be my vocation. So surprise, surprise, here I am in my 50s, and there's a company that actually makes herbal formulations, and, they make a difference in certain people's lives.
It's the best when you compare up the thing that you love, both things that you love, helping people and herbs. And it just made this beautiful company.
That is making a difference. Yeah. Because we use it on our kids. We have the adult products too. And not because we're affiliates. We had your products first. Yeah. I worked with a practitioner, and she prescribed, she recommended one of your products for me to take. And then that's how I learned about you, at least. Yeah. And you are making a huge difference. I mean, that's why we're here with you, because people have taken our recommendation and used Bioray, and they're like, hey, but we have questions about this. And that's why we're like, okay, let's reach out to Bioray and see if we can get somebody on the podcast to talk to us. And I'm so grateful that it is finally happening. So,
Me too.
So when it comes to what's the timeline of you starting the company with your ex-husband / having kids of your own, and then how did that all tie together, and then starting the business? What does that look like?
Well, it's messy. It was way messy. It was 1990. There was no, 1 in 60 rate of autism yet. This was like just right before this sprang up. And so I became pregnant. Tim and I met. I was working at the tea garden. We hit it off. We were talking about herbs until like 3 a.m. He had a clinical practice. I'm really great at customer service and making sure people get what they need. So that part of his business wasn't being handled. Us caregivers, we just get in there and we're just like, what do you need? And what do you need? And what do you need? And you're just like all dealing it out. Okay, got it handled. And so he became one of the top clinics in LA County because we just got back to people right away. We didn't leave their lab results hanging out for 2 weeks. They heard back from us within the day that we received them.
Yeah.
So I was really a stickler for really good customer service to our patients and clients. And Tim, we just became so busy that and it was all word of mouth, no advertising. And I became pregnant with Woody, our first son. And I had to put a playpen in one of the treatment rooms, and Woody would just sit on my lap. And while doing like the point tester, so we did EAV testing, which is measuring the meridians according to amperage and seeing if those meridians are agitated or they're underperforming. And then you put herbs or a remedy, a homeopathic, on a plate that's connected to it and see what you can do to bring that meridian into balance.
Is that similar to frequency testing?
It is. EAV stands for electro measuring, according to Dr. Vincent, who was a French practitioner of the meridians and really the electromagnetic field. So we know that they're called ting points. So they all have an ending on the hands, the feet, and so you can measure. They actually have a electrical current. We measured in nano amperages, meaning a very small waveform, and you can see if it's excited or underperforming, and it'll tell you how the lung meridian is doing, or all of the meridians. And then we would treat with acupuncture, and then we also had a sound table. So we would do the Tibetan chants, and they boom, boom, and so you're getting that all through the body, all the vibrations. We were really into
really ahead of your time. Like that's really like that's stuff that people are talking about now. That like I feel like I'm just hearing now.
Yeah,
and like
we did ozone bagging.
Wow.
We had hot and cold shower. Yeah, we did UVB, so ultraviolet blood irradiation. So taking blood out, cleaning it with the UV light, and then putting it back in.
That's amazing.
Yeah. It was a very full service clinic, and the babies just had to be there. I mean, I didn't know where to put them. I did eventually get support, but for the most part, they spent every day in the clinic with us.
Yeah.
And consequently, they kind of have they'll take anything like bitter. They don't even pretty much know what bitter is. They've taken every herb. Since they were little kids. So there's something in their palate that they can take a lot of the really bitter herbs. And they both work in the company now. So one in the innovation side in supporting Bioray, making sure our culture is strong. We have a culture of excellence. People are happy. And then Woody, as I mentioned, is in manufacturing, and he keeps upgrading manufacturing and expanding it. And he's got that engineering mad scientist type brain.
Love it. That's awesome.
Yeah, and they love herbs. They've been doing it all their lives as far as it was just in their realm, right? Like now your kids could easily become herbalists because they know what it's like to taste them, how they feel. The brain's getting that information. Oh, when I feel like this, mommy gave me that. So my kids started requesting different formulas when they were like 6 and 7.
Because they kind of knew, I have a I have a tummy ache. Let me take this. Or,
Exactly.
oh, I'm kind of sad. Let me take this.
What also a gift you gave to your boys that you taught them to like pay attention to those things? Because like I didn't really know that like, oh, like to pay attention, like, oh, I ate this food and I feel crappy. Like I never really made those connections until I was like an adult. And like I know it sounds dumb, but like what a gift then. And we're like learning to like, you know, teach our kids like, oh, hey, like if gluten makes you feel bad, like maybe let's not eat it next time, and you know, learn our lessons. But like what a gift you gave your kids then to be like, hey, you know, how does this herb make you feel? Does it make you feel, you know, like, do you have more energy? You know, like just what a gift.
Yeah.
Like for them.
Thank you. Well, I mean, the 5 and under, as our body's developing, the nervous system, the lungs, all of it, that's where our body's learning what works and what doesn't work based on what our family's tradition of food is, herbs, medications. And so the body's really smart and it learns to get what it needs from those foods. If somebody's on a KFC diet, right, and McDonald's, the body will figure out how to get what it needs to the best of its ability from those foods. So the body's an amazing organism. And in those first 5 years of life, it's like the computer's being built and the wiring's getting put in. So it's really, those foods in first 5 year of life are actually our allies for the later in life.
That's so fascinating.
Because that's what the body used to build itself.
The body is so cool because I remember being in the first trimester of my first pregnancy, and I was so sick that I lost 10 pounds, and I was mildly well, no, not mildly, actually. It was the first kid. I was very panicked, and my midwife, I remember her saying, listen, if the only thing you can keep down is a Dr. Pepper, the baby will find a way, the baby will get what it needs. Your body might bear the brunt of it, but it's so cool that in those early years from both pregnancy up to 5, like the body it's there to survive. And that's such a cool thing.
It's there to survive. And I think that your mindset, we're going to be successful in becoming a mom and birthing this baby. That's 50% right there. FDA's actually measured that. So a drug only needs a 50% impact, but they don't take into account that it could be that the people in that study got well just because they thought they would get well.
Yeah.
But that's all it takes.
Mindset's so cool too.
Yeah. So, yeah.
So then, couple of the different directions I want to go, but like, I'm so excited. What do you recommend then? Like, how did it look for you and your kids for the first 5 years of like nutrition wise / supplement tinctures? But like, what would you recommend to moms listening of like, hey, like I have a 2-year-old, a 3-year-old, who's maybe not adventurous in their palate, doesn't want, like, what would you recommend? And how did that look like for you and your family?
I made congees because
what does that mean?
Our firstborn was allergic to everything. Okay. Can you imagine? So I bear this kid who, like, given the first little bit of mushed organic pear at like 6 months old, gets these big, you know, patches of dry skin. So I was like, oh my gosh, Tim, we're going to have to go to congees. So congees are a traditional Chinese rice-based water. Basically, they cook it overnight, but you can either make them savory or sweet. And it depends. So your sweet things are going to open the spleen and the stomach meridian for kids that have tummy issues, a hard time digesting. So I just put herbs in there, cooked them overnight with the congee, and gave him the water, and he just drank it. And that I knew he was getting nutrition. And I would do a brown rice congee or a white rice congee. Think of horchata, the Mexican rice drink.
I'm lost here.
You know
so good. Yeah, it's good.
So good. It's so
it's
sweet
like
and
rice
yummy.
pudding, but in a drink form.
We've talked about this before, haven't we?
Yep. Yeah. So it's just like the taste of rice pudding, but in no rice.
If we can find a recipe, we'll put it in the description for everybody to try it.
Okay, I can actually give you
a
congee recipe. You just make it in your crock pot. So easy.
Okay.
And so Woody was also, once he weaned himself off of mommy's milk, he was allergic to many of the different types of milks. So you give them congee water, and then you can put different herbs in there, or just make straight congee water with a little bit of like barley sweetener. And it's kind of a milky color, and he just didn't know any different. And it strengthened his spleen and his digestion. And then pretty soon he was able to eat regular foods.
So then that's very interesting, because a lot of people think like, oh, my kid has allergies, they'll just never be able to eat this, or there's no way to like, you know, heal or activate their spleen, or nobody really, traditional doctors don't tell you that. They're just like, oh, nope, just bananas, bananas for the rest of his life. Or maybe they'll grow out of it, you know, which I'm like, do you really grow out of allergies? Is it more like environmental? Like okay.
Well, if you consider for a baby, the stomach spleen isn't finished developing until 9 to 12 months year old. Right? So they're just under a year, so 9 to 12 months. And so their digestion isn't fully formed. And then if we're trying to give them, you know, even, you know, high protein diets will be a little bit harder to digest. Those are very cold on the digestion and actually close it down. So you want to have warming foods, and that will help the healing of the GI and help it grow. In fact, we're about to launch a baby product for just that. It's called Baby Nourish.
Amazing.
So you're getting a little preview.
Yay.
Do you want to see the box?
Yes. Let us see it. Oh, this is so exciting. Oh, your outfit's so cute.
Oh, thank
I love
you.
your pants.
So this is Baby Nourish.
Oh, that is cute.
And so, yes, this is just for what we're talking about. So there's herbs in here that will warm the digestion, actually giving it the nutrients it needs so that it can develop as it's supposed to, and then be able to take nutrients from mommy's milk or from different foods. But it is an issue. And so a lot of this, yes, comes from my own experience as a mom, or that it was hard.
Yeah.
And that's what Tim and I have always said. You know, our job was to shorten the learning curve for other people if we could.
Yeah.
That's kind of our mission too, because, you know.
Because we're kind of first generation crunchy. I hate the term crunchy. It's like overused now, but we're kind of first generation crunchy. Our moms did a great job. They did the best with the knowledge that they had. But we're really the ones that are like, okay, no, Mama, I was an antibiotic kid. Because my mom wanted the best for me, and she thought she could trust the doctors. And if they said, oh, she needed an antibiotic, she gave it. So now we're just flipping it a little more. But if we can help stop some of the gut issues I have from hitting my children and my grandchildren and other people's children, that's the goal.
Yeah, that's the goal.
Yeah.
And like just general motherhood of like, hey, I feel like our generation especially was like marketed to that like motherhood is a death sentence, and that's like you can't do anything. You can't. You're no traveling, nothing happening. So that's my mission of like, hey, no, actually, like I actually feel more inspired to make a difference for the next generation because of my kid, not because like I was when I was childless. Like honestly, like I lacked a lot of purpose when I was childless, and now I have like. And I'm also just way more resourceful with time. Like, like I have 20 minutes. This is happening.
Well, even with you taking your boys to work, I took my kids to work up until we shut down the business. Yeah. And they're 3 and almost 5. They have no problem talking to adults. And they're at this young age because they just come to work. Mommy talks to adults, so I'm going to talk to adults. And I'm sure your kids had a lot of good that came from them going to work with you and seeing you work every day. Yeah. And just learning all of that.
Very similar. My kids were small children and had no problem. They would come to parties with us. Yeah. And, you know, hook them onto the table with a chair. And they would just actually converse with people. And they were quiet when they wanted to be quiet. Sometimes they were loud, but we just I established with them that this is when you have to, I just was really clear. This is when you have to act like an adult. Mommy knows you're a baby or a little kid, but right now we're with adults. And so you have to act like adults, or you can go play where the kids play. Yeah. I was just really, I wanted to give them the options of how they behaved. Yeah. And then I also was aware sometimes just behavior takes over their little bodies and they're like, you know, doing their thing. But Yeah, they're still very comfortable. They get into conversations with people like riding by on their bike and ask a question.
Yeah.
So they will stop people in the street and chat with them. So, yeah.
It's a gift, especially with the newer generations that are kind of stuck in their phones. They can text you a paragraph, but to conversate in person is just different. So it really is a gift now, I think, just conversating.
Yeah.
That's very true. Good point.
So can I go back real quick?
Yeah, because I want to go back too. So
I want to go back to the baby how would a listener who's like, okay, I have a baby, how do you know if the spleen needs some help?
Number one is you can take the finger, and inside here, there'll be a blue vein. So it stands out darker in infants, and they also may have it here. That means they have wind in the spleen channel or the digestive channel, and they're going to have a hard time. So that was one way. Woody had like a bright blue vein here and on his both fingers. So I knew he had a spleen issue. So that's one way. But the other way is just having a hard time digesting foods, whether they get a bloated tummy or they're having regurgitation or a lot of out the other end, a lot of bowel movements with a lot of gas, or it's runny or it's hard.
Okay.
Those are not normal digestion.
Is that
signs of normal digestion?
Line the same as the sugar worm, or is that a different? Because I know you went up with the vein.
Yeah,
is the sugar worm a different parameter?
Yeah, okay. I mean, in Chinese medicine, we actually call it an evil wind.
Okay.
And the only reason they call it evil, it doesn't mean really like evil, right? It just means it's creating havoc.
Okay.
It's not peaceful. They could have called it something different, but they're Chinese and dramatic. You know what I mean? So
I love
it's like, you got a wind in your digestion meridian.
Okay.
You know we love this brand so much, even before we were ambassadors for them. So we have partnered with Bioray for this episode, and we have a code for you guys. Use UTSP10 to get 10% off your order on bioray.com. And let's get back to the conversation.
Now, what happens? I'm sorry. I love just running. Okay, so what happens if, like, you said it around like 9 months? That's usually when you would implement this?
It can start earlier.
Right.
We saw it in Woody at like 2 and 3 months.
Okay. So then what happens then? For one thing, there's just so many things like, oh yeah, baby gas is normal. Just give them the bicycles and call it good. And I'm like, okay.
Yeah, that doesn't last very long.
No. But then there's also that. But then what happens if it's not addressed? How does that look in not an adolescent, but like a 2, 3, 4, 5-year-old? If that meridian that what'd you say, evil wind? If it isn't addressed,
if they get a little wind,
what does that look like if it doesn't get addressed in the early stages?
Well, it depends. So there's a couple, everybody's different. Like if they're in a family that eats things like sauerkrauts and yogurts or fermented foods of any kind, they probably will self-correct.
Awesome.
And probably be just fine. If they're in a family, if they're born into a family that's eating fast food or really highly cooked processed foods, they're probably going to have issues, or it'll be their nemesis, right? It'll be like what we call a constitutional issue, where it's something that will, when their immune system is down, that'll be where it flares first.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. So when you noticed it at 2 and 3 months, they're still usually either nursed or formula or whatever. But at that age, do you recommend mom taking something to kind of help correct that? Or do you wait until the baby's old enough to take the herbal supplement?
Well, I tried and nothing worked.
Okay.
So I just started putting the powdered version of a formula for the spleen and digestion. I would just wet my finger, and then I would just stick it on his tongue, and he'd do the little, thing. But he would take it, and so it just started helping him.
Good tips
to develop it.
Yeah.
So babies can take remedies. There's nothing wrong. It's particularly what we call the tonic herbs. Those are very gentle compared to a herb that's for an acute issue or a really chronic issue. But particularly the acute issue herbs tend to be more bitter and alkalizing, and the tonic herbs are warming and help things open up for things that are like kind of tightened down and, not functioning well. It opens things up so the body can start healing.
Okay.
That is something that a lot of people are afraid of, that they're like, everything I take will go through the breast milk. And what you're saying is that's not really what happened. It didn't really help. But also, like, people are very afraid to give kids anything. Like, all of the bottles always say, like, don't give. And it's probably a litigation issue. Like, they don't want to get sued.
I think my prenatal said, ask your physician if you're pregnant or nursing. I was like, this is a prenatal. Yeah. I think it's just a cover. Some of it's just cover your butt.
Yeah.
It is. I mean, we are inspected by the FDA. We have regular inspections, and we have to follow BPRs, batch production records, SOP, standard operating procedures, MMR, master manufacturing records. All of that is in place, but they can't regulate us. We aren't a drug, and we can't make drug claims, but we have to make sure we're making clean products. The quality is there. We're not setting things on the floor. Our vents are cleaned on a regular basis. All of that kind of thing we're actually treated as a food manufacturer.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so when you hear about that people have these on their labels, it is just a precaution.
Yeah.
Yeah. And most of the time, people in our country don't recognize that food is the medicine that we're giving our children.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's why I've been, my daughter's about to be 2 in June, and I've been made fun of a lot by, like, people in our life of not giving her sugar and, like, really trying to formulate her palate as best as I can. Like, we have so much fun. People are like, oh, you're no fun. I'm like, we have so much fun in other ways. Like, just because I don't give my kid, like, piles of ice cream, like, she eats literally what we eat. We eat roast, she has a roast. If we have, salmon, she has salmon. Like, it's not saying it won't be different with the second child, because I've heard that's, I've heard that's a wild card, but, like, you are the, you have the debit card that buys the food, and so, or buys the supplements. And this is, I'm so grateful for resources like your company. Like, you make such a huge difference in families, because in a world where, like, you can't really trust supplements, because, like, some things are just, marketed to be green and healthy, and it scares, moms of, like, I don't know what to give my kid. It's really great to have you guys.
Oh, thank you. And we do our best to, my idea is to put on our packaging symptoms.
Yes,
because
that is amazing.
We all experience that, right?
Oh, yeah.
Like, sluggish bowels and bloated tummy and gas. Those we can all recognize those. But when people get into this, really, either they're not saying anything at all because they're afraid of repercussions, or it gets too medical. I just don't think that's helpful for moms and dads.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that the symptoms are right there. And, like, your quiz on your website is really good.
Oh,
that's a really
you.
great resource.
Thank you.
So
I want to pop back, if we can, to more of the earlier baby ages. And so my daughter loves strawberries, and we've tried to take them away and introduce them again. And she does not all the supplements, but as she needs them, I'll kind of go with my gut on her. But she always gets hives on her body when she eats those. What?
Yeah, they're
new,
a high
right?
histamine food.
No, that's been there for a while, and it was kind of paired with the milk. But now that she's had enough raw milk, I think she can still do raw milks. She can't really do, like, we did go get some ice cream the other day, and she broke out a little bit. But which of the child drops help with that eczema rash, or could potentially correct that strawberry issue?
It would be Calm.
Okay.
Yeah. So Calm is going to support the liver detox pathways, but it's also, there's a whole immune system inside the liver that will help her eventually be able to tolerate more and more foods.
Yeah.
And so that's a thing. And the other thing that I did with my kids, and this is just like a homemade mom tip, I took foods that Woody was allergic to, and I took, like, a little teeny pinch, and then I put it, this has got cytoflora in it, but I put it in some water with a lid, and then I shook it 30 times And then I took a drop of that and put it in another glass of water. And then I shook that 60 times. And so that was a homeopathic of the food that Woody was allergic to.
Okay.
And I would give him drops of that every day. And I have to be honest, I was like willy-nilly. I'm like, some days he got it all in, 7 days in a row, and then I'd forget for 2 days. And then there was just a point after, I would say about 2 to 2.5 months, where then I could introduce a little bit of that food.
Okay.
And then I built it over time. So the other thing too is quantity is going to matter. So when the allergy to something is high, somebody may be able to tolerate a little bit, but a lot's going to throw the threshold over, where the
Okay.
body goes into the fight or flight mode.
Yeah.
It sees it as a foreign body to do something with,
Right.
not on the positive side. So there's things that you can do, like making a homemade homeopathic of the food that your child's allergic to, and increasing over
Okay.
time, and then adding the food in after a couple months, and see how that goes. Because what you're doing is you're getting the immune system used to, this isn't something to be
Okay.
having a response to, like it's an invader.
Yeah.
This is something we can build a response to.
Yeah.
So
Okay. Because that girl, it's her favorite. And I can't even give it to her
Yeah.
brother and hide it, because she'll find it and she'll eat it. And the next thing you know, she's covered in hives. I was like, kiddo, I know you love them, but let's cool it till I can figure out how to fix this.
yeah, and isn't it interesting? Sometimes we're like allergic to the thing that we love, like bread for some people, and like,
Yep.
I love bread,
Oh,
but
that's
like,
me.
yeah. And in TCM, we say that we can have the thing we're allergic to about every 7 days without it having a detrimental effect on
Oh, interesting.
the overall constitution.
Yeah.
Do you think that's the same is that the same with gluten? Because she has a gluten allergy. Is that
Which part?
well, the every 7 days, you just have a migraine then
Yeah.
every
What
7
if
days.
if I get like a couple weeks
Is
ago,
it a
I was at work
glyphosate issue?
and I got contaminated with, and it was organic. I got like organic egg bites, and the box, that's the only thing I can think of. But I can tell when I get glutened, I get like the same pain in the back of my head that I've had since I was a kid. And I'd get such bad migraines that I would just be out. And a couple times they would take me to the ER for morphine and nausea shots, because the migraines were so bad. And then they couldn't figure out what it was. They tried to put me on migraine medication, but I was a teenager, and I was like, well, I'm not going to take this every day just for no reason. So thank God I didn't take it, because I don't have to now detox that out. But now I know if I get glutened, I'll get like this nagging pain in the back of my head, and I have about 20 minutes to take something, or a migraine's going to knock me out. And then I usually comes along with vomiting for a day or two, like a food poisoning incident. And that's every
Wow.
time. So even she makes her own sourdough from scratch, all ancient grains and everything. And I just won't try it, because
I know.
I don't know, I'm too busy to be knocked out for 2 days with all those
Of
fun
course.
symptoms. But, and I've heard
Right.
things like I could reverse it, but I also don't know if it's
Can she reverse it?
is it or isn't it? Because I did a parasite cleanse. Still too scared to try it, because supposedly if you get the parasites out and you get all that, I may be able to introduce it. But what are your thoughts?
If you've had it since you were a kid, there's something constitutionally you were set up with.
Yeah.
Like whether you came in with that, right? So we all come in also in Chinese medicine. One of my kids, it's their liver. Another kid,
Yeah.
it's his stomach,
Okay,
right?
yeah.
And those are kind of an underlying thing that I always just make sure that they're doing remedies that support that ongoingly, because that's just going to be there where things happen to fall
Yeah.
out. So with you, there's something that happened with gluten, and it could be hereditary.
Yeah.
There's just some things to check out, like
Yeah.
what is your blood type?
O positive.
Oh, okay. So you don't do well with gluten anyway.
No, nope. Do
You
well
can't
with meats.
digest it.
Right.
Yeah. So, there's a couple of things that you can do. Number one, just if that happens again, we have something called a Shin Tonic that
Okay.
I made up, which is you mix 2 dropperfuls of NDF plus
Okay.
with 3 dropperfuls of loving energy. So you're binding to it, giving the cells energy from the NDF plus, but then you're also taking an adrenal support to help the body's response to it.
Okay.
And so that usually works in pretty quickly, like within 20 minutes.
That's awesome. Okay.
So that's a really
great.
good one.
Yeah.
I've been at conferences where the whole hotel was moldy. And so we started making pictures of Shin Tonic and passing them out, because so many of the moms were sensitive, and they, by the second or third day, their systems were just like, okay, I'm crapping out here, like just too much mold. And then the other thing is that you could do, you might be a good candidate for doing the homeopathic version. Like, could you take a piece of gluten, something that you know has gluten in it, and making a homeopathic, very, very diluted at first.
Okay.
And then you just gently, you will actually increase the potency of it. So it's got, the water carries the frequency. So how homeopathics work is they have a memory. They're able to store things. And so it's actually storing the memory of the gluten. You're not actually getting the gluten. But what it does is it's very, very gentle for your body to go, oh, we have gluten, but oh, the proteins aren't here. But I understand this is gluten. And it just starts getting a little ease with it. And then you can increase.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's so fascinating, because I kind of circle back again to you talking about constitutional issues. It's so fascinating, because I've heard, I don't know, how long have we been on this? Over a decade. And I've never heard someone say, like, that's what you're going to always revert back to. Because I've noticed in times of high stress, it always goes back to my guts hurt. So that's so fascinating that, like, the body just, your one thing, this is your one thing. Because how many times have I called you complaints? Like, my stomach hurts again. And it's nice to have the mindset of, like, oh, okay, it could not just be my stomach. It could be something else. And my body's just like, oh, we're stressed. Let's go to the gut. Let's attack it.
Exactly.
That's so fascinating.
That's where we're gonna hold that, because it's a weak point that we come in with, right? Mine also happens to be my stomach.
Yeah.
So whether it's in emotional stress or it's a food stress, generally the first place I will feel it will be my tummy.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So what do you take when that happens, when you're stressed? Do you do loving energy first, or do you do?
Well, for my tummy issues, it's different than your migraine. So what I actually start with is a little bit of probiotics, a little bit of, live probiotics. And then I do Cytoflora, which is a cell wall broken probiotics. And then I will add in Saccharomyces boulardii, which is a beneficial probiotic from the mangosteen fruit.
Okay.
And for some reason, those three together for me really do the trick. I'm just suddenly 20 minutes later, I'm like, what issue?
That's awesome.
I can't even remember that I had it.
Yeah.
So,
okay.
Yeah.
Do you guys, this is a side note, because another mission for this podcast, at least for me, is to, like, heal Irene's gut. Because, like, she, like,
over the long term.
I mean, we've been friends for 15 years plus, and she's had gut issues since the beginning. And that was when we were both, like, when I was eating Jack's Pizza for breakfast, lunch, and dinner.
Yeah.
And we would just eat candy all the time, and we knew nothing. But, like, now we're, 15 years older and have children, and we're like, oh, okay, like, all this has an impact. So, do you guys, like, are you still a clinic that people come to, or do you guys just sell the products?
We aren't a clinic any longer, or clinics. But what we do have is we have what we call product specialists, because they're highly trained in when to use the products, how to combine them. And then we call them our 5 magic questions, which we need to know there's 5 major things that we need to know are either happening or not happening with somebody, or they're sort of happening. One is bowels. Are they moving every day? And what do they look like? Is it like grapes or bananas? Okay. Like, how many people, if you say, are your bowels regular? And they go, and you go, really? How often a day do you go? And they go, oh, I go every 3 days.
Yeah.
And we're like, oh, that's regular for what you think is regular. But what's actually regular is like 2 to 3 times a day, like 12 to 14 inches long. Not too soft, but not hard. There's a whole parameter. So we ask these 5 questions to see, well, where's the place to start? And then is it going to be, because we've got to follow the way that the body wants to work naturally. That's going to give it the opportunity to heal, because something's backing up in one of the systems, whether it's your bowels, your liver, your GI, and then it could also be your lymph right? Or did somebody come in with a kidney issue? Like there's just things that we want to find out. And if things are moving down and out of the body, we have a better opportunity of bringing remedies in that will heal different systems.
Okay.
But when the body's not moving things down and out, then we're just dealing with all the garbage that's not leaving that should be leaving.
Yeah.
So then
because I've done all these protocols, and I remember telling her, I was like, man, my kidneys are fine, my heart is fine. I was like, if I could just get things out, literally every problem in my life would be gone.
That's
all systems would be functional.
Maybe I haven't asked you detailed questions.
Yeah.
But it could be that you need to be on a protocol for your GI for, somewhere between 4 to 6 months.
Okay.
And see what your difference is.
Yeah.
And I love doing a little questionnaire before and after and ranking things. And then doing again after, because you really want to see, did we make progress or not make progress?
Right.
Like it is subjective, but it's somewhat objective. Like you can say I was getting stomach aches 3 times a week, so I'm going to rate that higher. That's an 8 kind of thing. And then at the end of say 4 months, it's like, I think I got a stomach ache once a month.
Yeah.
That's a massive improvement.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And just even a 2% improvement means we're moving in the right direction. But generally, I like to see a 50 to 75% improvement within.
That's what I would like to see.
2
Yes. For you. I know you want it to, but I want it for you, friend.
Yeah. Well, and I've tried PEMF. I've done, you name it, and I've probably tried it. But what a lot of it was when I was working with practitioners, and they were great. And I feel like every practitioner helped nudge it like a 2% better each time, which is good. But I love that your tinctures are liquid, because I know I have poor absorption. So after spending, I don't know, over the last decade, thousands of dollars probably in supplements, now I know if I'm getting a liquid under my tongue, I'm actually getting it versus taking a pill that's probably going to just not go anywhere in my guts. It's really nice to have the liquid availability.
Yes, liquids are the ancient way that we took remedies. It was the first medicine. I mean, the first fermented cancer beverage was created in Africa, and it was made with apricot pips.
Okay.
Right inside the apricot seed, it's got Laetrile and some other cancer fighters, but they fermented it, and the fermentation made all the difference in the world because it crosses the blood-brain barrier through the capillaries in the mouth. And so the brain's getting the information. You're getting it on all systems. Everybody's getting the information so that then things can go to work.
Okay.
And that's the benefit of either a tincture, a fermented product, liquid product, is that the body doesn't have to go to work. And then plus with pills, you're bypassing this whole information system. Which you would get at first, and the brain's going, oh my God, we've got B12 coming in, and some magnesium and everything. And then the rest of the body's going, right on, I need that over here. And it is an information highway. Our body is always in communication with itself and different cells.
We love this brand so much, even before we were ambassadors for them. So we have partnered with Bioray for this episode, and we have a code for you guys. Use UTSP10 to get 10% off your order on bioray.com. And let's get back to the conversation.
Having that touch the mouth is so, I mean, I actually open all my capsules when I'm taking my probiotics.
So then what do you do with it? Do you just crack it in your mouth, or do you put it in a glass of water?
I mix it in glass of water.
Okay.
Yeah, and I just open all of them. The only thing that's the exception is something like an enzyme, like a WOB enzyme, like a proteolytic enzyme. Do you take enzymes with your food?
I did years ago. I haven't in a while.
That's a really good tip, clue, because foods just don't have the same enzymes or as many as we need, back 100 years ago.
Yeah.
So helping the body break those down will also take pressure off of the gut.
Okay.
What type of enzyme was that?
It's called a proteolytic enzyme. So it's a little bit different, where proteolytic enzymes break down dairy, protein, different vegetables.
Okay.
And,
I know our
gluten.
listeners
I know I've
will
heard
love
the
this.
term, or I've read the
Do you-
term, but
Will you, do you have like an affiliate link that you could send us that we could put in the description or something, or something? We can just also find it online, but.
Well, I will tell you there's a sad situation going on. There is a shortage of Wobenzyme, which is my favorite brand, originally created in Germany. So actually we're going into production on our own. I never wanted to go in this, but we're going into production because I'm like, what's wrong with you people?
yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Where's your systems?
Yeah.
You have to make this available. You can't be without enzymes.
Yeah.
And this is such a great enzyme, proteolytic enzymes. They're really, they're almost fundamental. They're like kind of ancient.
Okay.
This is maybe a dumb question because I don't know much about enzymes. So please tell me if this is dumb. Why do we need enzymes? Like, is it because our soils are so depleted that like we're not actually processing real food? Like, to me in my mind, I'm like, God doesn't make broken systems. So like, what did we do to the system that now we have to take an oral enzyme? You know?
Because it's missing. It's missing from the soil. We don't have those are the building blocks. And so they're missing, and so we just have to replace them. But you're right, God makes everything perfect, whole, and complete. However, man has gotten involved and thinks he knows better. So that's a problem.
Because like let's go back to the beginning of what you said of what's the statistic for, is it autism you were talking about?
Well, now it's 1 in 6, but when my kids were little, it was 1 in 60.
Wow. Well, okay, this is what we get canceled all the time on Instagram for the things we say, but like we're not healthier as a society. Like we have not, people are like, oh yeah, trust your doctor, do everything they say, but it's like we're not better we've actually gotten worse. Like the longevity of our life has been cut short, and people are on way more medications way earlier in life, and like we're not doing well. So
no,
what would you help us?
Okay, well, I will tell you. So there's a thing that FDA and other agencies look for. You, as two gals, just talking about your heart's desires for society and other parents and kids, you can talk about the structure of the body and the functionality of the body. But when you start talking about diseases, FDA goes, whoa, you're practicing medicine without a license. That's the short of it.
Yeah.
That's what they think. It's really not true, right? You're giving clues. So the way that you want to word things is in symptoms. You can talk about symptoms all day long. Just don't put a disease with it.
And then we won't get canceled.
And then you won't get canceled.
We're in Instagram jail all the time.
Yeah.
Oh my God. We got into jail with our emails with MailChimp, and I called it JailChimp.
JailChimp.
And we were in JailChimp for like a year and a half. I was like, oh my God, what's wrong with you people?
Yeah.
Censorship.
But the thing, and I get, everybody's trying to protect their ass, and I'm like, okay, I understand. So I will be responsible and accountable, and I will back that up. And so what we've done is we actually even share with our customers on Facebook how to speak, so we can talk to them.
Oh yeah.
And get the exchange going, because that's what it's doing, is it's stopping the conversation when we speak in disease terms. But if we talk in symptom terms, then we all know what we're talking about.
Yeah.
So we can talk about that all day and no problem.
This is
good to know.
It's kind of like, I don't know if you're following it, but this whole Washington Post article that came out about hormonal birth control in women, and they're like, oh, all this misinformation about birth control. And it's like, or is it?
It's in the pamphlet.
Is it misinformation, or is it reading off, like, is it validating the side effects that are actually happening to real women, saying, hey, this is happening to me, and it's in the side effects in your insert, and it's happening and it's real, but you're saying it's misinformation, and you're spreading misinformation and making women do things, whatever. Anyways, it's so dumb that we have to speak in code and just to get healing, because it's not beneficial to the pharmaceutical industry if, like,
we're not here to pick a fight or make anyone feel like a bad mom. We're genuinely just here to say, like, hey, this is something we maybe struggled with, and she struggled with and my friend struggled with. Let's just help
seeing a
everyone's
trend
lives
here.
get a little better.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. Yeah. No, it's totally true. I had a miscarriage after my second baby, which is actually a high statistic that 1 in 3 moms will miscarriage after the second birth, which I had no
interesting.
idea about. I was like, are you kidding me? And
Do they know
luckily,
what the statistic? Why?
Why? Yeah.
Do they know why?
No, I asked the doctor. He said, no, it's just a statistic. If you take all of these thousands and thousands of mom, that's what the numbers pan out to. We don't know why. And one of the things that I found was that it's just to acknowledge it, but to also say like, hey, sometimes it's good to, that's why Bioray will never take a position of one way's the right way. I have to say we have worked with patients who were saved by chemotherapy, by radiation, but guess what? They were on a heavy protocol with us measuring their biochemistry, their urine and saliva, measuring their pH, their ammonia, their nitrates, all of that. So we knew exactly what foods supported their body while they went through the chemotherapy. That's the trick.
Yeah.
How do we balance that?
Yeah.
So my thing is that not one way is absolutely the right way. If you break an arm, you want to go to the doctor, you want to go to the hospital and get that fixed. And you may need to be on antibiotics if it was exposed to dirt or something, but it's the regularity of it. And then there's ways that we can heal the gut after being on antibiotics. That's the part I want to share with people is do what you need to do in the moment. We can fix the damage afterwards.
Yeah. That's how impressive like God's design, like the body, if something interrupts the natural system, like an antibiotic, like we have the ability to then take tinctures and heal ourselves. Like with the right tools, your body can go back to factory reset, basically. Yeah, it's
and
incredible.
in Chinese medicine, they would actually put it in a chicken once a month for the ladies, for the girls in the house, the mom, the daughters. They stuff a chicken with all herbs that actually replenish after the luteal cycle of a period. So they rebuild all of the blood. You've got all your minerals back so that the next time you have your menses, you're not going to be depleted.
Oh, so like we're having a friend's dinner.
Yeah. Well, I actually have meat birds arriving the 1st of April. So.
Fantastic.
Yeah. So we will be raising and harvesting our own meat birds here soon, and she'll benefit from it because you're getting a bunch for your freezer. So,
yay!
I won't stuff it with herbs. You're responsible for that part.
Okay.
But we've lost that tradition.
Yeah.
And that's part of just being a human being and utilizing what God gave us that grows.
Right.
Are there any, what books do you recommend? Because I know we're starting to build our home libraries on natural remedies or whatever, but do you have any books you recommend that are good herbal?
It's a great question.
I do. I love Ted Kapchuk's The Web That Has No Weaver.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a great
Never heard of it. That's awesome. We'll read it. It'll be here by Tuesday. That'll be great.
Yeah, that's a great book. I'm trying to think. I have another one on Pediatric. I can give the name to you on actually different meridians to massage on infants and babies to help things like the spleen and digestion and helping with sleep at night.
Okay.
That's really useful. And you're just really just gently stimulating because the energy meridians get blocked. So we want to just gently make sure that everything's flowing.
Okay.
I'm new to this whole, I think everyone's always new, but like the meridians and energies and stuff and how like certain livers, and please correct me or reword this to where it makes more sense, but like certain organs are connected to emotions. And like, it's all like, a lot of people like to separate things like, like you have your liver specialist, you have your heart specialist, you have your upper GI, lower GI, but like we're all such a system that like it all like your emotions that you feel as a human being are connected to your organs. Like, and a lot of people like to separate all the things, like, oh, like if you're a psychologist, all these things, like, but we're all one. Is that true that, like, say, like your liver is connected to like the anger emotion and all that? This is all very empty, a very hollow question, but I'm not quite sure how it works.
It's not hollow at all. It's very astute, because everything is connected. And so the way that we look at it in traditional Chinese medicine and TCM is the fact that not one came first. It wasn't the physical body and the physical needs or the spiritual, mental that came. It's like they both work really closely together. And so what we want to look at is, for example, the lungs hold grief. So we've had patients that were on the verge of saying, like, I just don't want to be here anymore. Yeah. Well, they had a chronic cough, wet cough. Okay. All we did was worked on the cough, and their psychiatrist said, oh my God, I don't know what happened, but he's dating, he's going for walks, he's getting out of his home. So was that really a mental, or was that started by a biological issue? Yeah. So it can be either one. The thing that works is being curious about it and just trying, do I need to talk to somebody? And let me see what I can do for my body to help that along. Yeah. So liver is anxiety, frustration, not wanting to be adaptable. Parasites is like explosive anger. We want to always make sure the bowels are moving, or we just see crabby people. Food wants to be happy when you can't poop.
Yeah, geez, yeah.
Okay, thank you guys so much for watching part 1 of our interview with Dr. Stephanie Ray, founder of Bioray. You are going to love part 2, so tune in next Monday to hear the rest of this amazing conversation.
Thanks for being with us today. Follow us on Instagram at @underthesun_podcast. We'd love to meet you.
Please help us out by subscribing on YouTube and leaving a review on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. We'll see you next time. Please remember this information is made available to you for informational and educational purposes only. It is in no way a substitute for medical advice.